dearest future doctor, have you ever wondered, like, certain characteristics of your parents look like the same of yours, but certain do not? Have you thought ever why? For example, straight-haired father having a long nose and a curly-haired mother having a short nose. In their hierarchy of children, some will be having the straight hair, some will be having the curly hair. Why is it so? Yes, my dear student, that is the study of genetics. So what basically is genetics? So going deep into this beautiful portion, we need to clearly analyze the difference between 4 basic terms that we are going to use. Yes, now we are going to study the chapter called Principles of Inheritance and Variation. My dearest NEET aspirants, when you are going to study this chapter thoroughly, you are not going to get less than 12 questions because it covers portions from almost all the chapters in biology. Get me? So 12 questions are, ready for you when you thoroughly analyze and understand these portions, because related portions from many of the chapters lie hidden in this chapter. So when we are going to thoroughly analyze it, we are going to snap and grab 48 marks in your NEET examination. Yes, now let's learn these 4 basic terms. What is heredity? What do you mean by inheritance? What is variation? And how the term genetics came into existence. See, first of all, we should understand that the transmission of genetic characters from parents to offsprings is simply called as heredity. And for inheritance, the characters that for which, resemblance, responsible for resemblance is called as inheritance. And those characters which are responsible for the difference between parents and offsprings, it is called as variations. So it can be of mutations, recombinations, and immigration of genes, which we study later on. Now, that branch of genetics, that branch of biology that deals with these 2 terms. What is the first term? Inheritance. What is the second term? Variation. So the branch of biology that deals with inheritance and variation is simply called as genetics. So what is genetics? That branch of biology that deals with the study of inheritance and variation. Now, when you are going to study for a NEET examination, the one thing that you need to specify is the coinage names. You need to learn who coined this term. The great biologist Bateson coined the term genetics. So it is an often repeated AIPMT question. So who coined the term genetics is none other than by Bateson. The last point to be noted here is there was a question like this. Inheritance can also be comprised of variation and genetics. So I is equal to V plus G is a point to be noted over there. So when you study about a term, you need to study who coined the term, and if that is a branch of biology, who is the father of it. So meanwhile, we'll just remember those terms. Who is the father of biology? Aristotle. Who is the father of botany? Theophrastus. Who is the father of zoology? Again, Aristotle. So father of zoology and biology remains the one peculiar famous man called Aristotle. Now coming to the father of genetics, you need to remember 4 personalities because it is repetitively asked about the 4 major branches of genetics. First one is father of genetics, second one modern genetics, third one human genetics, and fourth one experimental genetics. Let's see what are they and who all are the fathers. Yes, the great man called Gregor Johann Mendel is called as the father of genetics. The father of modern genetics is the man who coined the term genetics is none other than Bateson. Now we will study in detail about experimental genetics towards the last of this portion, and Morgan is called as the father of experimental genetics. And human genetics, Archibald Garrett or A. Garrett is called as father of human genetics. There we need to study about Garrett, a small specification which might be a question for you in the NEET examination. See, Archibald Garrett was the man who discovered the first human metabolic genetic disorder. So the first human metabolic genetic disorder is alkaptonuria, which is otherwise called as black urine disease. So this black urine disease was discovered by Garrett. So who are the 4 famous personalities? I repeat, see, repetition or the confirmation is the basis of memory. So whenever you need good memory, you have to repeat it again and again. So I repeat, who is the father of genetics? Come on, tell me along with me. Who is the father of genetics? Gregor Johann Mendel. Who is the father of modern genetics? Bateson. Who is the father of experimental genetics? Morgan. And father of human genetics, it is Archibald Garrett. So what is the major contribution of Garrett? See, Garrett was the first to discover the first human metabolic genetic disorder, alkaptonuria, or which is commonly called as the black urine disease. Now let's learn the greatest, interesting, creative story of this wonderful man called Gregor Mentor. Who was he? Say, my dearest students, this chapter is a very beautiful chapter which contains large amount of secrets and curiosity. Now, let's learn about the great man called Gregor Johann Mendel. See, Mendel, he was born in the year 1822, which is a neat question for you. So, now Austria is a Czech Republic. So this great man was born in 1822. And what happened? He joined the Augustinian monastery at Brünn at the age of 22. Now, when he was ordained with the priest and when he became the priest, he had a reverend name in front of his name called Gregor Mendel. You know, that name was called as Gregor. So his name was Johann Mendel. You know, he took the name Gregor upon entering his monastic life. Now starts the major questions. Mendel, he conducted experiments on garden pea, which is otherwise called as Pisum sativum, for 7 years. This is a very, very important, repetitively asked NEET question. For how many years Mendel conducted his experiments? So it was 7 years. This number of years is not alone sufficient. You have to study these years 1856 to 63, because for one examination it was asked like this. All the options were 7 years, but the year was different. 56 to 63, 57 to 64, like that way it was jumbled. So please remember in your mind, Mendel conducted experiments for 7 years starting from 1856 to 1863. Now, what was the experimental material that Mendel used? It is not, sweet pea or pig pea. It is none other than the simple garden pea, which is otherwise called as Pisum sativum. So there you need to learn 4 things. My dearest future doctor, if you are a strong NEET aspirant, you need to learn connectedly in order to remember things out. You need to learn connectedly. So what was the material used by Mendel? It was garden pea. Scientific name, Pisum sativum. Diploid number 2n equal to 14. And Pisum sativum belonged to the family Fabaceae. So can you all remember these 4 points? So what are the points? First one, what is the material? Garden pea. What is the scientific name? Pisum sativum. Diploid chromosome number 2n equal to 14 and belong to the family of Fabaceae. Now in 1865, from all his experimental work that he conducted, he presented the results of his experiment in a paper called Experiments on Plant Hybridization. So he presented the paper in 1865 and his paper was published in 1866. So there you need to note down 2 years. One is 1866 and the other is 1865. If it is presented, it is 1865. If it is published, it is 1866. And this great man, the secret behind the genetics that we see, the story goes like this. This man, Mendel, conducted experiments, called out on for everyone. He was unsung, he was unrecognized for years and years. Nobody could understand Mendel's work. After presenting, publishing all the papers, his works remained unrecognized. So, Mendel called some of his great brilliant disciples one day. And he started explaining all the contents. As some of us, nodded their head. Some of us told, sir, we cannot understand. Some of us told, this is very confusing. Nobody could understand the mathematics behind his botanical investigations. So what did he do, He compiled all the works in paper and he filed it. Then he kept a paper in the front and then he covered it. And then he called his disciples and told, one day will come in this world where people will start thinking of this science. So if anyone comes up with a work, you will have to go to that man at whatever nook and corner in the world that he lives, that doesn't mind. You have to go and give this to them and tell that I have asked to give it to them. My dearest students, do you want to know what is the history and what happened? See, what happened in the history, for about 34 years. How many years? For about 34 years, Mendel's works was unknown. Nobody cared about this Mendel's work. After 34 years, 3 predominant people from 3 major areas of the world. One was from Germany, the second one was from Holland, and the third one was from Austria. So Germany, Holland and Austria, Correns, De Vries and Semark. Those were the 3 botanists. They at the same time came up with some works relating to this. After 34 years of Mendel's death. Then, these disciples, they carried this bundle of papers to them and told that this is our father's work, our father had said so to give it to you. All the 3 people, they were very curious to know about it. They struggled about all the papers and looked all the works. They were really astonished to see that a man 34 years before in a monk man, that is in a monastery, he did these much works. They were astonished. But You know the scientific world, what is the speciality of scientific world? Any work they get, they publish in their own names. But when they were going through all the pages, in the last page, it was written a statement like this. To whomsoever it may concern, to whomsoever you study this project, if you found this as effective and truthful, you shall study it and publish it under my name, Father Gregor Johann Mendel, or else you shall go to hell. This was the statement written by Gregor Mendel. So fortunately or unfortunately, these three people believed in Christian mythology and they were afraid to get, the bad words of the Father. So what they insisted is, they studied it and they published it under the name of Gregor Johann Mendel. So these three persons were the beautiful scientists who made us to know about this great man called Gregor Mendel. So they were called as rediscoverers of Mendel's work. So my dearest future doctor, a very, very important NEET question lies there. Who were called as rediscoverers of Mendel's work? So Correns, De Vries and Semark, three people were called as rediscoverers of Mendel's work. Correns was from Germany. The material that he used was maize. De Vries was from Holland. The material used was evening primrose. And Semark, he conducted experiments in a couple of flowering plants. So you may get a NEET question from somewhere in this table. So you should remember these three names, Correns, De Vries and Semark. Okay, so it is Karl Correns, Hugo De Vries and Erich von Semark. So that is how the greatest genetics came into existence. Now you may be wondering, what was the inspiration behind Mendel? Because all the Mendel's work were unsung, right? Nobody recognized it. Nobody had the power to consider the mathematics behind Mendel's work. Nobody recognized it. Now, what was the major struggle and major source of problem that Mendel at that time faced? Let's see. See, people started asking Mendel, don't you feel bad? Don't you feel mad to work and then unrecognized and then it gets unsung? Now, Mendel did not reply to all those stuff. The single sentence that Mendel told to them is like this. Mein Zeit wird Sohn kommen. The meaning is like this. My time will yet come. My dearest students, Mendel was born in 1822 and today in 2021 we learn about Mendel. That was the Mendel's time. So it took years and years to get approved for his work. So whenever your works are not approved, when it goes unrecognized and unsung, never worry. Each and every man in this world has his own time and that time will come. So for more videos and for more explanations, subscribe our channel. Be with Grandhas, be a winner.